lights of Paris shimmered against the Seine that night, but nothing glowed brighter than the golden aura surrounding BTS's Jimin as he stepped into the Dior Spring-Summer 2026 show. It was one of those rare fashion moments when time seemed to slow, a collective breath held, the flash of 1,000 cameras flickering like fireflies, and the world witnessing an artist reborn. After more than a year of silence due to South Korea's mandatory military service, Jimin's reemergence on the global stage could have been understated. A quiet return, a soft smile, a tailored suit. But Jimin has never been one for predictable narratives. Instead, he arrived in Paris not merely dressed in Dior, but embodying Dior, a vision of contrast, restraint, and revelation. The blazer was on, the shirt was gone, and confidence flowed from him like perfume through the air, intoxicating, unshakable, and unforgettable. The arrival of an era. It began long before he stepped onto the Dior runway. Weeks earlier, rumors had already started swirling. Jimin's coming to Paris. The whispers were half hope, half disbelief. For fans, armies, who had waited patiently through his service, every new photo, every airport sighting, felt like the first crack of dawn after a long night. When he appeared at Incheon Airport, dressed in pastel pink stripes and thin-rimmed glasses, it felt like a prelude, calm, poised, almost misleadingly soft. No one could have guessed that the man who stepped off that plane would, days later, dominate headlines with one of the boldest fashion statements ever made by a K-pop artist. At the show, held inside Dior's gilded venue on Rue François Warner, Jimin's entrance sent ripples through the crowd. Dressed in a sharp, jet-black Dior suit, worn with nothing underneath the blazer, he redefined minimalism with maximum impact. His bare chest gleamed subtly under the lights, adorned only with a fine silver chain. His hair, freshly dyed a pale blonde, framed his face with cinematic precision. The effect was mesmerizing, equal parts vulnerability and power. As he moved through the crowd, editors whispered, stylists gasped, and fans outside screamed his name, so loudly that the sound spilled into the show hall itself. It was electric, one attendee later wrote on X. Everyone felt it. The energy shifted when Jimin walked in. The man who redefines the gaze. Fashion, at its best, is about storytelling. It's about how fabric becomes language, how skin becomes statement. For Jimin, whose artistry has always thrived at the intersection of strength and softness, his shirtless Dior look was not simply a styling choice. It was a thesis. He stood there, not as an idol confined by the expectations of K-pop, but as a man liberated by artistry. The openness of his blazer, the deliberate exposure of the chest, it all hinted at transparency, self-assurance, and reinvention. It was as if he were saying, "I'm not hiding anymore. I've evolved." This was not the first time Jimin played with fashion to express deeper emotion. Over the years, fans have watched him explore fluid silhouettes, lace shirts, delicate pearls, and tailored suits, pieces that blur gender norms and celebrate individuality. But this was different. The look in Paris marked his transition from muse to master, from fashion participant to fashion storyteller. Behind the decision, what many didn't know, until his birthday livestream days later, was that the idea to go shirtless had been entirely his own. "I was nervous," he admitted softly to fans, a small smile tugging at his lips. "It was my first public schedule since I got discharged. I wanted to do something memorable." According to Jimin, he asked Dior's styling team whether he could go without a shirt beneath the blazer. They hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said yes. The rest was history. That decision became one of the most discussed fashion moments of 2025. Within hours, Jimin Dior Paris trended across platforms in over 50 countries. Fashion critics called it a visual rebellion, a rare instance where vulnerability became the most powerful form of confidence. One Tatler Asia writer described it perfectly. Where others rely on extravagance, Jimin uses absence. His bare chest isn't a void, it's an exhale, an assertion of calm power, a symbolic rebirth. Every comeback tells a story, and this one was layered with meaning. For South Korean artists, the period following military service is often viewed as a delicate phase, the transition from duty to freedom, from silence to stage. Many return cautiously, aware of the scrutiny awaiting them. But Jimin's return was fearless. His appearance in Paris marked the start of his second chapter, one not defined by the rules of the idol industry, but by his own rhythm. It was as if he had spent his military days not retreating from art, but quietly preparing to redefine it. To understand why this moment struck so deeply, one must remember who Jimin has always been, a performer who embodies emotion through movement, a singer who can turn fragility into strength. In Dior's open blazer, he did the same thing, using exposure not as provocation but as poetry. The internet reacts and melts. As images from the event flooded social media, chaos ensued. He's shirtless. In Dior. This is not a drill. Jimin has returned. Fans worldwide lost their composure in the best way possible. Within minutes, his name topped global trending lists, and clips of his entrance accumulated millions of views. Editors from Vogue, GQ, and Elle reposted the look, praising its subtle sensuality. Hindustan Times called him the man who broke the internet with his silence and his skin. Instinct magazine wrote that his appearance blurred the line between fashion and performance art. Even those unfamiliar with K-pop found themselves drawn in. In one viral tweet, a Parisian stylist confessed, "I didn't know his music, but I understood his power." Dior's favorite muse. It's no coincidence that Jimin's comeback was tied to Dior. His relationship with the French house runs deep. Back in early 2023, Dior appointed him as a global ambassador, praising his timeless elegance and modern edge. Since then, Jimin has appeared in several of their campaigns, bringing a unique fluidity that complements Kim Jones's vision for modern masculinity. But beyond contracts and campaigns, Jimin seems to embody Dior's core philosophy, beauty born of discipline, rebellion wrapped in refinement. The blazer, the tailoring, the controlled risk of exposure, all echoed Dior's dual identity, structure and softness, art and anatomy. When asked backstage about his favorite part of Paris Fashion Week, one Dior insider reportedly said, seeing Jimin again, "It felt like a missing piece of Dior's soul had returned." More than fashion. To call this simply a fashion moment would be an understatement. It was cultural, emotional, and symbolic. In a time when K-pop idols often face rigid expectations about image and masculinity, Jimin's choice to appear vulnerable, exposed, and proud, in a room full of global critics, felt revolutionary. He didn't need shock value. He didn't need controversy. His power came from restraint, from knowing that confidence is quiet, that true style doesn't scream. It simply exists. In that open blazer, Jimin bridged his identities, the soldier who served with humility, the artist who sings with heart, and the man who now redefines himself on his own terms. The return of a global icon. As the show ended and guests poured out into the Paris night, conversations buzzed with the same topic. Did you see Jimin? In a week filled with celebrities, supermodels, and fashion legends, it was the Korean singer who captured the collective imagination. By dawn, the photos had been shared across every major outlet. His name appeared on headlines from the Times to Vogue Korea. But for those who followed him from the beginning, from the dance studios of Busan to the world's grandest runways, it was more than fashion. It was vindication. Jimin didn't just return from military service. He ascended. His shirtless Dior moment was not about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was about ownership of body, of art, of narrative. It was the act of an artist who knows who he is and refuses to be anything less. The future that glimmers ahead, as he prepares for his next musical chapter, fans wonder what this version of Jimin will sound like. If his fashion choices are any indication, the music will likely be fearless, intimate, refined, and experimental. Dior's stage was merely a preview of what's to come. For now, one thing is clear: Jimin's comeback has redefined the very concept of return. It's not about restoration, but reinvention. The boy who once danced in oversized shirts and black chokers now commands fashion's most coveted front row with a single open blazer. In Paris, surrounded by art, beauty, and light, Jimin didn't just attend Fashion Week, he authored a new chapter in its history. And when he smiled that soft, almost knowing smile at the cameras before slipping into the night, it was clear: Jimin's era has only just begun.